Hi, fifth years. I really hope you're well. Um, we've been moving on to close reading lately, and the aim is to do one kind of lesson a session. So we've looked at understanding questions, which I did first of all because they're the ones that carry the most weight in the paper. Sometimes a third of the marks can be just understanding questions. Second of all, we've done context questions where you work up nasty words with the surrounding story and you have to prove how you work them out. We've also done summarising questions. That's really important for the last question, where you have to almost summarise each passage to work out where on earth they agree or disagree. There'll be another lesson on that, don't worry. And today we're going to be looking at sentence structure questions. So there is a point to all this. I think we're possibly 3 lessons away from being ready for an assessment, which therefore will probably happen next week. So 3 lessons away, because I want to make sure that you've gone through each type of question before you hit the assessment. Okay, so you can have a little bit of revision before then. So today we're going to be looking at sentence structure questions. Now, sentence structure is basically how a sentence is built. Now, I've got a 6-year-old, my goodness, how did I get that wrong? I've got a 6-year-old who can't quite write in sentences yet. That's perfectly normal at her age and stage. And actually, so all her writing is one long, big, jumbled paragraph. And actually putting in the sentences, putting in the full stops, will transform her jumbled thoughts into ordered thoughts. And that is possibly one of the greatest jumps that we go from like just jumble on words to full on sentences. And so using a full stop is one example of how you can create a structure in a sentence. Therefore, it just, it goes to reason that any punctuation can be used to structure or organize a sentence. Under the banner of sentence structure, you can also have things like the order of the sentence. So in English, we are natural storytellers in English because the drama or the really important subject of the sentence always comes at the end of the sentence. So, which creates a natural kind of interest or climax. You've got to wait to find out what something means. So, for example, today is my birthday. It's not, but today's my birthday. Okay, so you kind of have to wait to birthday to figure out. So when I say today, you're like, oh, what? So you have to wait till the end. In Welsh, for example, you'd say pen blwydd yw'r heno. You'd say birthday is today, and a lot of languages follow that structure. So it hasn't got that kind of climax in it. So the order of sentence is important. So for example, if I wanted to be fancy, you might want to comment that I've put the subject first. So say, no, I wanted to grab your attention, like I'm writing a persuasive article about climate change. And I wanted to talk about this kind of, let's think, I wanted to talk about the devastation caused by a recent event. Instead of saying the bushfires were devastating, I might say devastating dash the bushfires in Australia, or something like that. I'd switch the order of the sentence and notice when they do that. A sentence structure can also mean types of sentence. Now, if you know that there are different types of sentence, what I like to do is to apply this in real life. So, for example, an exclamation is a sentence. A command is a sentence. I could say, please sit down, regular sentence, or I could say, sit down now. And so sometimes when people command me to do things, I'm like, don't command me. Don't use that type of sentence with me. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, a command is a type of sentence, So it can be used persuasively in life. So I'd like to see commands in your folio, please. especially when you're urging me what we should do to fix the problem that you've highlighted. Right, what else have we got? We have got commands. We've got questions. That's a type of sentence as well. A list is a type of sentence. So you can comment on a specific type of sentence used. Also, repetition. Now, repetition falls under the banner of sentence structure because you only notice if something is repeated if it's quite close to each other. If you repeated a word here and then 7 paragraphs later repeated a word here, I am really not going to notice unless you put them closer together, deliberately using the paragraph to create this noticeable repetition. That can be sentence structure too. Repetition covers lots of things. Repetition doesn't just have to be words. It can be types of sentences. It can be openers. I think, you know, openers of sentences. It can be, as I think I've said, types of sentences, haven't I? Could be punctuation that's repeated. Also, alliteration comes under the banner of sentence structure because, again, you only notice alliteration because it's there directly next to each other. Okay, so if I'm honest, sentence length comes under sentence structure, but don't do that because it's just really hard to get marks on sentence length. Anytime it says sentence structure, my advice is go for punctuation because that's the easiest to get marks on. Remember, you might get in the, say now it says, how does the writer persuade you of blah, blah, blah in paragraph 1? How does the writer use language? Language is a term for anything. If you look at the language, you could be looking out for images, you'd be looking out for word choice, you could be looking out for sentence structure. So in a language question, if you do choose sentence structure, tell me what you're looking at before you quote it. Okay, remember you don't get anything for the quote. National 5 you did, higher you don't. You don't get anything for the quote for noticing something. So for example, if it says, how does the language in paragraph 1 persuade you? And there's a big long list there. You would have to say list dash and then tell me how it was persuasive. Okay, remember with lists in particular, so what I was saying, earlier was always go for punctuation if you can for sentence structure. And my advice is, so it's a 4-mark question, try and comment on, instead of trying to like quote one thing like a list and trying to squeeze out 3 or 4 marks or even 2 marks from a list, that if you look at the answer paper, it asks you to go into so much detail. You're much better off quoting 4 little things that you've noticed and giving a brief comment on each. That is so much easier to get 4 marks, other than if you pick one thing and you're expecting to try and get, I don't know, 2 or 3 marks out of it. My goodness, they expect a lot of detail. It's quicker to pick 4, or if it's a 4-mark question, pick 2 things. Okay, right, so what was I saying? Okay, with lists in particular, if I've ever written a list about you, either I'm delighted or I'm really angry, because lists take such a lot of effort to write. Okay, there are so many tricks to put in lists. So you can start it off with a colon. That starts a list, not always, but it can really add a sense of drama. So I had a terrible weekend, full stop. You might never know why, but if I had a terrible weekend, colon, you should think, oh, she's going to tell me. And I'm going to set it up either as an idea. Oh, it should be quite depressing. My dog died. That will be, I've set up this really depressing idea instead of a flat, I had a terrible weekend because my dog died. That colon suggests a bit more kind of oomph, a bit more, as Len Goodman used to say in Strictly, a bit more welly. So I could give you a list of the terrible weekend I'd had. And the function of the list, you've always got to think, if somebody is bothered to create a list, it's either a positive list or it's a negative list. Figure out which. Don't ever say positive or negative though. You've got to tell me what the function of the list was. So maybe I'm going to tell you I had a terrible weekend because I did loads and loads of stuff for school. Right, I marked your essays, which, by the way, by the time you're listening to this, I hope to have done. I marked your essays. I planned my first year's work, I planned my second year's work, I marked my third year's work, wrote my fourth year report, you know, and then I ended with something huge like and marked all of your coursework and submitted it to the SQA. Okay, that ended in a huge thing, okay, which I haven't, by the way, because you know you've got until May or June to do that. But imagine that was a list. You've got to think to yourself, what is the function of this list? The function of this list is, I'm trying to persuade you that I'm hardworking, or I'm trying to persuade you that you should feel sorry for me. So what I might have done is organise all the things I've done, either to end in a climax, meaning starting off with me doing small things, planning lessons, and then ending up with massive things like giving grades to the SQA. That ends in a climax. That's like me deliberately creating this workload that grows and grows and grows. Or I might have deliberately ended in a anticlimax. I've got a really serious amount of work and I ended up with something small at the end. So I had a really stressful weekend, but you know, all the things I did for you guys, you know, third year reports, fourth year reports, and then I end with something like, and I chipped, so I had a terrible weekend and I chipped my nail at the end. And that would be, you'd be like, what? That would be an anticlimax. And you've got to think to yourself, what's the point of this anticlimax? It's to create humour, or it's to create this idea that I'm a little bit crazy because I work so hard. There's always a reason. Now, my thing is, if you don't know the reason for a list that you've come across in a persuasive close reading paper, don't mention it. You get to choose. Language allows you to go for anything. Sentence structure doesn't have to be the list that you notice. So go for something that means something to you, okay? With a list, there's lots of stuff to do there. So we talked about the climax, because I don't want you to feel sorry for me. It could talk about the anticlimax, to chip my nail, because I want you to laugh, maybe. And there's the classic ellipsis, ... which has a function which means my list of stuff never ends. Okay, it's always persuasive. The list can be a really juicy number for creating lots of marks for you. I'm not going to go through each of the punctuations, but those are the main ones. Another one to look out for, which is my personal favourite, is when people use definitions as definitions meant to be factual, but they use it as slightly put in their opinion. So if I wanted to provide a definition of Portobello High School, I might say Portobello High School bracket. A definition would be a secondary school in Edinburgh bracket. That would be a fair definition. Yeah, I could twist it into an opinion. Portobello High School bracket, the best secondary school in Edinburgh bracket is where I work. Do you see what I mean? I have sneakily added my opinion and presented it as a fact. I used to have a friend who used to say fact after every time they presented an opinion, and it was so annoying, but it was actually quite persuasive. Things like, you look great today, fact. So yes, facts are not always facts. That's what I'm saying. They're opinions often. So look out for the parenthesis or the dashes as well. Dashes do the same thing. So I could say, this class dash excellent. Now that's my opinion, but the dash suggests it's more factual. Well, you are lovely, but you know, so forth. Right, so go for punctuation, please. I don't like people who go for length, because there's a marker that never seems to go well. Yes, I seem to have spraffed on it again for you, sorry. Where are we? So the tasks. Task will be number 1. I want you to just put the definitions in the right table after marking last week's work. Sorry, I should have said that first. Mark last week's work. Tell me that little table about where you lost marks. Yes, then put all the definitions of sentence structure bits, sentence structure answers in the right bits. Then do the same for punctuation. Then look at my example about unicorns, weirdly, and then answer the questions. And that will be you done. So what are we doing this for? We are leading up to an assessment, and I think we want to go through tone, we want to go through imagery, and want to do the last questions. We've got 3 more sessions before we do a wee kind of, not checkpoint, but an exam, SQA example. Okay, folks, have a great day and enjoy your close reading. I say this with a wry smile because I know how you feel about close reading. I feel the same way. We've got to do it. Bye, folks.